Welcome to HK Garage. Gauge pod install part 2. Stand by. This is what we got. That sticks out of the block like that. This is what we need. So this is quarter inch here, quarter inch here, quarter inch here. So everything's a quarter inch. So this should drill right into the side of the block. Yep, right there. That'll drill right into the side of the block right there. This will drill in here, and this will drill in here. I will need an adapter for this, but it's just a little bitty short one. There's a chance for you to see. See how that's all smashed down there? Yep, that's what sealed that up. Of course, we don't want that anymore. This will be much better. So now we got this here. What we're going to do, because if I put this in this way, it might be up against the block and be a problem. So we're going to keep this coming out like that. So it's going to come out that far, but that's all. You know, that is as far as that. Now that would have been on top of that. All right, so this is the first one we're going to put in. Back to our natural gas tape. You know, like I say, you can use regular Teflon tape if you want, but the natural gas tape is impervious to oil and gas, gasoline, as well as natural gas and stuff. So this is the one you want to use. You remember that little cone that goes in here on the thing? Once you crush it down, it pretty much stays on the line, and you can actually take the line loose and pull it off, and the cone will stay on the line. Then when you put it back in, it'll seal right up. And that's ready to go in the block. So we went from this, which also had this on top of it, to this. Much better. When we put it in, you'll see exactly what it looks like. Now we're going to pop this one back in here, just like we had it before, and figure out where the hell the hole is. Where's the hole? Way up there. Okay, now we got a problem. When I put this in, this won't clear the block pieces. So we'll pop this off. We'll rewrap it. Then we'll put this in and put this in. Once I hate to do it, I'm going to need a quarter to a quarter adapter, because this needs to come out. Even with grinding that off, you can see right here where the grease is, it won't clear, and it's not even tightening up enough. Welcome to the world of custom. Now, it wouldn't be so bad if I was one of these custom shops that I could go to the parts bin and pull an adapter out, but guess what? I got to go to the store. Oh well. Y'all didn't need to see me taping this stuff and putting it together again. That's what we got. That's not what we got. That's what we got. It's about as long as that one. It's a little shorter, so. But it's the best I can do, because you got to be able to clear this. So, if I could have got just a female to male quarter inch, then that would have made it this shorter, and that would have been the way to do it. But I couldn't find it. I had to cobble it. So, whatever, cobble together, ready to put it back on. All right, let's see if this will work. I mean, I know it will, but all right. So that's going to go in there. Got to get it threaded in there straight. Kind of an odd angle down here like this. Okay, we shouldn't leak there. Now, I don't know if you can see this. I hope so. I'm going to tighten up on it. But right here, see, that's on there. It's stuck on there now because it's crimped on there. And now I get to take it off, put it on all at once. Right, let me see something here. I'm going to play with this line. As I'm here, putting that up a little bit like that. Now, I'll put my little coils back in a little better than what they were. Back sort of like I had them before I messed around with everything. Alright, like that. This in here. Actually, I want it to stretch just a little more because I want this to be, yeah, right there like that. See, so now this is right here. See, I can feel that I got really good give there. I've got it so that it's right in the middle, sort of. There. Yeah, it goes like this real easy, and this way here, it'll go back and forth. That way I'm not worried about that coming out of there. That 3/8, there it is. Come on, you. Okay. This one's got a lot more room to move now. Come on now, get on there, you. Right there. Okay, just like that. This was out to here. Now it's down to here. It's still a little long, but it's okay. Yep, it's okay. Straighten this just some. There, that's good. Okay, there. All right. We'll get it right there in the middle. There she goes. All right. Volts are fine. Underwater temperature, of course, is cold right now. So, let's check the oil connection, make sure it's not leaking. I don't see any leaks. I think we're good to go. Finally got that oil pressure thing in there. These are the lights go in the back side of the gauges. Each one of them's got a white and a black. I always consider if you got a white and a black, the black is ground. If you got a red and something else, the red is positive. That's just the way I look at it. So I've got a wire here. There's a speaker wire, but I've replaced all the incandescent bulbs with LEDs. And so the LEDs hardly draw any juice at all. So this speaker wire will be just fine for this. It's a gray wire. It has, when you split it in two, it has one side is gray and the other side is gray with black. So the gray with black, I'm going to say ground or negative. What I'm going to do is take a section of this and I'm going to connect it to the very first light at the top. And then we're going to take it down a little further and we're going to connect that to another section of the gray speaker wire and the second light. And then we take another section and it'll go down. I may be able to do this in one, but it'll connect to a long gray wire that'll go as far as I need to get it all hooked up in the truck, and it'll be connected to the last light. That way one section of wire is all I need instead of running three different sets of wires to the power source, I can only have to run one section of wire to power source. And when I get to the truck and figure out the lengths and all, I will put a plug on it so that I can unplug and plug it in if I want to take the gauge pod off. You've seen me do the shrink wrap and twist solder and shrink wrap. To me, it's the best way to do things, and that's the way I'm going to do this here. So I don't need to show you that and bore you with that. We'll get back to the actual install in the truck. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to set up a dimmer switch for these lights so we can dim them down. I got this online. It's basically for RVs, so you can dim the lights in them. You just turn the knob and it dims them, turns them off, turns them on. Wires just hook up right here. Problem is, this thing is way too big and bulky to put behind the dashboard. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take it apart and then take this knob off, because I got a better looking knob going anyway, and we're going to just use the parts inside of it. So I got the 4 screws out of it. Now I'm going to just gently pry this knob off here, because like I said, I have a better looking knob. So you got to get that off first before we can go any further. And once I get the knob off there, then we can pull this bolt off right here. And this bolt holds the actual knob in the casing. Got this one screw out, and I got to get the nut, all the rust away off it. Once you get that nut off it, then the thing just pops right off, and then you can get down to the bottom of it. Now it's just a matter of taking this one screw out in the middle. Okay, so now we got down to this. That just comes right out of there. We get rid of all that plastic stuff, and this is what we got to work with here. This is a second time I did this. The first one, as I was fooling around with trying to put it in the dashboard, I broke all the wires that connect the 2 pieces together. And so I decided that we would take a second one apart that I had. I'm going to take a hot glue gun and I'm going to glue these wires together so that they'll be something to hold on to, something sturdy, so they won't break so easy. What I'm going to do is, these are way too bright, so we're going to put this in. This is a dimmer switch, and it came in a great big square plastic thing. I took it all out of there. Comes with a different knob than this. This was a different dimmer switch that I got that, well, just didn't work out at all. So first thing we need to do is install this. Yeah, that's sharp, all right. Won't drill through plastic. That's more like it. That's what I'm talking about. Theoretically, this should go. In that hole. Yeah. Like that. Perfect. Okay. The idea is that sometimes you got to take his dashboard off. So you don't want it to be permanently wired in and have to undo the whole damn mess. So this is a 4-way plug, and it plugs in one way, right? Just like that. And it'll plug in there. And then when I want to take the dashboard apart, let's see, come on, you. Plugs in there, not easily, but it plugs in there. I want to take the dashboard apart, then I want to be able to just take that off. It's really hard to unplug. I'm going to put this end on here at the short end so that I have a long end to grab a hold of like this and give it a push, and it's off. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. That's exactly how I'm going to do that. Hey, you saw me make this thing up last night. This is the same thing that I had, but I have another one. So what I did was I did the hot glue here to keep these from going anywhere, so from breaking these little wires. These are little genteel. And then I made the rest of it. I've used hot glue to actually make kind of a harness, and that's what we got there. So now let's install this thing. Got to do a little soldering in the truck here. We have a problem putting this thing somewhere where I'm not gonna burn anything. I'm not gonna melt anything. This should be okay. This is my wire for the lights. Put this right about here because I want to put in a plug. And there's the dimmer switch all wired up. You see cables going into the dashboard, and you plug, and the other end goes up to the dimmer switch so that I can unplug this and take it off anytime I want. Turn it on, hit my dimmer switch. That's all the way up. And then slowly go down until they're not on anymore. I turn it up. Just like that. All right, run into a snag here. The temperature sensor cable isn't nearly long enough to get all the way over to the side of the engine where I need to put it into. So what we're going to do is I'm going to continue on. We'll finish up everything else, and I'm going to get an electronic temperature gauge, which will have a sensor and a wire. So I can make the wire any length I want. It'll be fine. All right, so next. That'll plug into the voltmeter. That'll plug into the water temperature meter. And this will get wired into the truck. Alright, I got the gauge now, and I bought a inline temperature sensor adapter that you put in the hose. And so what we're going to do here is I'm going to cut the upper right out of your hose, and I'm going to just slice that sucker right off here. I got it cut now, and it's not even straight. If I'd been a smarter man, I'd have taken some tape and wrapped it around the sucker so that I'd have a guide. Now I'm just going to pop these cheesy little clamps on here that they sent with us, the adapter. Of course, it's all made in China, you know the deal. And then we got to put the adapter in line in the middle of this hose. This adapter I think is maybe a little too big for this hose, but I'll make it work. I'm going to throw a little heat on it with the heat gun, because what will happen then is the hose will expand and make it a little larger, and the adapter, of course, isn't going to get any larger because I'm not heating it up. It's going to stay the same temperature that it is. And I'll do the other side the same way, and then we'll get it on. And there you have it, neat as a pin. Now what we have is a nice flow through right in the middle of the hose where the sending unit, that's that brass thing there, it's going to be right down in the water coming out of the block into the radiator right past the thermostat. So it's going to give you a good reading of your temperature. What I'm doing now is attaching this wire to the pole on the sender itself. This sender is going to go back to the gauge. Now what this does is the gauge is going to send 12 volts to the sender, and then this gauge is going to measure the resistance to ground to tell you how hot or how cold the engine is. As the engine heats up, the sender changes the resistance to ground, and then it reads back in different resistances, and the gauge reads you the proper temperature. Next thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to put a ground on it, because this thing is now insulated in rubber. The adapter has a bolt on the one side of it there and a little place to screw it down to, and that is to run a wire from the actual adapter to a ground on the block. That way you get a good ground here so that the gauge can measure the resistance to ground. So we're going to find a good ground, and we're going to just put this wire right on the edge of here, and then we're going to go ahead and ground it out to the block. I got a mess video here that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Let me just explain some things. First off, these gauges, they have this collar that screws on the back of them. They're not good for this gauge pod. They don't fit well at all. You want to get the ones that have the U on it. The back of the gauge looks something like this. Not this one. This one just doesn't work well. They don't fit in well. You can't really tighten them down proper. So on this wiring, it's real simple. You just got to follow the directions. I brought that red wire that is to the sender, that is connected to the sender for the water temperature gauge back here. So the water temperature gauge is going to get a positive and a negative to it, and then it's going to get the sender wire. The positive and negative, of course, are going to turn the gauge on, and it's going to send the 12 volts to the sender, where it's going to measure the resistance to ground and going to give you a reading of the temperature. The voltmeter is just straightforward. It's so simple. It's a positive and a negative. And the oil, you already saw the oil hooked up. The lights, you want to connect the lights to a switched lighting source. Now, you could put them into the actual headlights, and then you could use the dimmer on the headlight, on the dash lights to dim them. But the thing is, then you're going to have a discrepancy between how much you can dim your gauges according to how much you can dim your dash lights. You don't want to mess with your dash lights too much. You want to be able to make sure that you can adjust them down. You don't want anything blinding you. I hate when I'm getting blinded. So the wiring's pretty simple. As far as this gauge pod goes, I chopped off my molding and put it together, and so now that the molding's chopped off and it's put up like this, it looks like this, and the whole time I'm like, well, I'm just not happy with this. It just didn't look right, and so then went back and read the directions. And you're not supposed to chop off the molding. What you're supposed to do is just attach it to the outside of the molding. Now you may have to cut, and I'm positive you would have to cut the molding behind the gauge pod where you wouldn't see it, so that the wires and everything can go through and you can get everything hooked up. I think that would be a lot better install, and one of these days I'll go to the junkyard and get a new piece of molding, and we'll try to redo this whole thing. Everything's just plug in and unplug except for the oil gauge, which is just a matter of unscrewing it. And I think I might get an electronic oil gauge for it anyway, so that way the oil will be the same, half sweep as the rest of them, because I had to. You couldn't get a voltmeter that was full sweep. I like the full sweeps, but I couldn't get a temperature sender, an electronic temperature gauge that was a full sweep. So I had to get a half sweep on that, and now I got a full sweep on the oil, and the other's a half sweep, and it just doesn't look right. So I'll probably replace that oil sender, that oil gauge, with a half sweep, an electronic one, and then we'll just run a new wire where the copper cable is right now. But we'll see. See how that happens in the future. I kind of damaged the bezel on it anyway. I'd kind of like to replace it. So that's about it for this install. Follow the directions on how to put the gauge pod up. It's really simple and straightforward, but like a dummy, I just jump in. I don't read directions, and then I screw things up. I know you've seen me do it before, and well, there you go. Now it's all together, it looks pretty good. Dash gauges are working fine. The gauge pod gauges are working fine, and they sort of correspond. I think they're okay, except for the oil, because the oil fluctuates on the gauge pod, which I suspected, and does not on the Ford one on the dashboard. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to put these gauges in, because I didn't trust those gauges. And other than that, it looks pretty good, other than the crappy install of the pod itself, which dummy me did without reading directions. So learn from me. Read the directions. Don't do what I do. This channel really is just about how I do things, and it ain't always right. That's for sure. Well, that's going to do it for this gauge install. This was one of the hardest videos I've ever had to edit, but it's finally done. Now, if you want to check out part 1, it's right here. So, till then, see ya.